Snow drifted across the training valley in slow, deliberate spirals as Sergeant Callum Redd lay hidden beneath a layered ghillie suit. His body melded seamlessly with the frozen ridgeline. His breath formed faint clouds that vanished almost instantly in the bitter wind, leaving no lingering trace of his presence. Callum had perfected the art of stillness long before Earth joined the Galactic Coalition, and the solitude of the snowfield felt more like an ally than a hardship. He listened to the valley's muted cadence with the same attentiveness he gave to any battlefield, knowing that danger often announced itself in subtle shifts rather than dramatic signs. Patience, in his experience, was a sharper weapon than any blade or barrel. Earth Command's transmission reached him through the soft crackle of his earpiece, its clipped tone betraying a deeper frustration. The Coalition had rejected, once again, Earth's offer to deploy its sniper units to the Zyphor front. Their explanation remained unchanged. Kinetic rounds were outdated relics, and human soldiers were too reliant on instinct rather than advanced targeting systems. Callum felt no sting of insult, only a steady acknowledgement of a long-standing prejudice. The Coalition valued predictability above all else, and intuition rarely fit neatly into their doctrines. He adjusted the bolt of his rifle, shedding a thin crust of frost from the metal. The weapon lacked elegance compared to the shimmering energy arms favored by alien forces, yet carried a dependable truth in every component. A bullet did not waver when exposed to deceitful refraction or hostile interference. It traveled a path governed by physics, not algorithms, and Callum trusted that simplicity more than any quantum-guided visor. A low thrum resonated overhead as a Coalition transport descended through the white shroud of the storm. Its nacelles illuminated the valley in a wash of artificial blue light, momentarily betraying the intricacy of the terrain. Callum watched without moving, noting the insignia of High Command painted boldly along its hull. Their arrival signaled urgency. Reports hinted that the Zyphor Dominion had launched a breakthrough incursion on a frontier world, overwhelming automated defenses with crystalline adaptations designed to distort energy weapons. For the first time, the Coalition considered that humans might possess something other species lacked, an approach unbound by reliance on technology that could be manipulated. Callum rose from the snow with patient care, brushing ice from his sleeves before approaching the landing zone. Captain Mara Sulin waited with characteristic composure despite the biting cold. Her stance radiated both discipline and unspoken resolve, traits that had earned her the respect of soldiers across species. She looked at Callum not with doubt, but with measured expectation. "They want proof," she said, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry over the wind. "They're not interested in partnership. They're here to confirm what they already believe about us." Callum studied her expression and found no resentment, only determination sharpened by necessity. "Then we give them what they need to see," he replied. Mara's faint smile softened the harsh lines of her face. "Exactly. The Zyphors are exploiting weaknesses in every energy-based system the Coalition relies on. If your methods can counter that, they can no longer dismiss us as primitive." Callum turned toward the storm's thinning veil. The landscape beyond revealed steep ridges and fractured ice fields, a domain shaped by both violence and silence. It suited him. It reminded him that skill thrived where assumptions died. He slung his rifle across his back and stepped toward the waiting transport, each stride measured and deliberate. The Coalition might doubt Earth's relevance, but the battlefield unfolding on the frontier world would judge without prejudice. That was the test he trusted, and he intended to meet it on his terms. As the transport lifted, Callum felt the mission's weight settle into purposeful clarity today. The transport's interior hummed with an uneasy tension as Callum stepped aboard, joining a contingent of Coalition soldiers who regarded him with thinly veiled skepticism. Their armor gleamed with polished alloys, their weapons pulsed with dormant energy, and their eyes followed him as if he were an artifact misplaced in a museum exhibit. Callum ignored the scrutiny, selecting a seat near the window where he could study the approaching terrain. Jagged mineral formations jutted from the ground in unpredictable angles, catching scattered light like fractured mirrors. Even from a distance, the world radiated hostility, a perfect battleground for a species that weaponized refraction itself. Across from him sat Lieutenant Threx, assigned as his liaison, an unwilling companion. Threx's obsidian skin glimmered faintly under the cabin lights, and his elongated pupils flicked over Callum with clinical detachment. "Your methods rely on chance," Threx said without preamble. "Projectiles cannot possibly maintain accuracy in an environment with this much magnetic distortion." Callum met his gaze evenly. "Accuracy isn't in the weapon. It's in the person who uses it." Threx's expression barely shifted, yet the faint ripple along his jawline suggested irritation. "Confidence without substantiation is dangerous." "Then watch closely," Callum replied. "You'll have all the substantiation you want." The transport shuddered as it descended, landing near a shattered outpost half consumed by glowing cracks where Zyphor troops had passed. Coalition engineers moved in frantic patterns, attempting to stabilize equipment that kept flickering under the planet's unpredictable energy surges. Callum stepped onto the ground and immediately tasted the metallic tang in the air, a sign of the volatile electromagnetic currents threading through the atmosphere. The Zyphors thrived in this environment. The Coalition struggled to adapt, and Callum meant to use both facts to his advantage. Threx fell into stride beside him, still observing, still judging. "Our reconnaissance drones cannot track Zyphor movements. Their crystalline bodies scatter every spectrum we rely on." Callum scanned the horizon, noting the subtle shifts in reflected light along the ridgeline. "Then stop looking where they want you to look," he said. "Light bends, but shadows don't lie. Neither does terrain." Threx paused, considering the statement without appearing to appreciate it. Callum allowed the silence to stretch as he unpacked his rifle, checking the chamber and securing a tungsten round with practiced ease. The weapon felt solid in his hands, grounding him amidst the chaos of malfunctioning machinery and panic chatter. Coalition troops deployed in defensive formations, their energy rifles humming to life. But Callum sensed the flaw instantly. They stood in clear sight lines, illuminated by their own equipment, broadcasting their positions to an enemy that could bend light like a curtain. He moved uphill, ignoring shouts calling for him to stay within the perimeter. Threx followed reluctantly, compelled by his assignment rather than conviction. At the crest of a mineral outcropping, Callum crouched and blended instinctively into the terrain. The jagged stone reflected bands of distorted color that could confuse any untrained observer, but Callum had learned long ago to separate illusion from signal. A flicker near the ridge caught his attention, too regular, too rhythmic. Zyphor movement. He aimed without announcing his intention. Threx, startled, stepped back as Callum squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle split the heavy air, followed by a distant shatter and a keening crystalline howl that echoed across the valley. Coalition sensors lit up, registering a Zyphor life form collapsing. Moments later, another refracted shimmer revealed itself, and Callum fired again, then a third time, each shot deliberate, economical, devastating. Threx stared at him, disbelief finally cracking through his disciplined mask. "You located them without scanners." "Listen," Callum said. "Your systems can't process what they can't interpret. But a person can." The battlefield quieted, but only for a moment. Deeper along the ridge, new distortions stirred, larger, more coordinated. Callum rose, sliding a fresh round into place, resolve sharpening within him. The demonstration was over. The real fight had just begun. Callum moved with deliberate precision along the jagged escarpment, each step chosen to minimize sound and silhouette. The planet's mineral landscape amplified small noises in disorienting echoes, and he used that quirk as both shield and weapon. Threx shadowed him at a cautious distance, no longer dismissive but not yet convinced, his gaze darting between Callum's movements and the chaotic distortions flickering across the horizon. Coalition troops secured the valley below, their formations tightening after witnessing the sniper's unexpected effectiveness. Yet none dared ascend the unstable ridges. Up here, unpredictability ruled, and Callum thrived in it. The shifting glimmers ahead signaled a Zyphor patrol, this one bigger, its crystalline carapaces catching ambient light in prismatic flashes. Callum paused beneath a jut of stone, slowing his breath as he studied the pattern of movement. Zyphors were not chaotic. Their bodies refracted wavelengths with uncanny uniformity, and once he learned their rhythm, he could anticipate their steps. Threx watched his stillness with growing unease, unfamiliar with the discipline required to become part of the terrain. "You are exposing yourself," Threx whispered, his voice low but taut. "No," Callum murmured. "I'm disappearing." Before Threx could question the claim, Callum eased forward, adjusting the folds of his ghillie suit until he blended with the ridgeline's fractured shadows. The Zyphor patrol advanced, unaware. Coalition sensors continued to misread the distortions, but Callum relied on subtle cues. The faint ticks of crystalline limbs against stone, the tiny vibrations beneath his boots, the slight disruptions in air pressure when their refractive surfaces shifted. He brought his rifle to his shoulder, aligning the tungsten round with the nearest Zyphor's thorax. The creature's crystalline armor looked impenetrable, but Callum had studied the way their refracted lights converged around structural weaknesses. He fired once. The round struck dead center, fracturing the Zyphor in a resonant burst that rippled through its formation. 2 more shots followed, each dismantling another soldier with precise finality. The surviving Zyphors scrambled, their refracted camouflage faltering under the sudden disruption. Threx stared, his disbelief tempered now with a dawning respect. "Your species learns to read worlds with its bodies," he said quietly. "Not with devices." "Devices help," Callum replied, sliding another round into the chamber. "But instincts keep you alive when they fail." A deeper reverberation rumbled across the ridge, causing both men to turn. Far beyond the scattered patrol, a towering crystalline silhouette emerged. The largest Zyphor they had yet encountered. Its body refracted not just light, but ambient energy, distorting the air around it in shimmering waves. Coalition forces in the valley recoiled as their weapons once again failed to track its form. The creature moved with ponderous certainty, each step radiating purpose. "That is a convergence guardian," Threx said, his voice tightening. "They are rarely deployed. Its presence means we are approaching a strategic node." Callum studied the guardian, noting the harmonic pulses that pulsed outward from its core. It commanded the battlefield without issuing sound, coordinating unseen Zyphor forces with refracted frequencies. Eliminating it could shift the fight dramatically, and the Coalition's energy weapons were clearly useless. "I'll need elevation," Callum said. "And time." Threx considered the implications. "If you engage it, the smaller units will converge immediately. You will not survive. I'm not planning on staying where they can find me." They moved together along the ridge, Threx guiding with knowledge of the terrain's geology, Callum navigating with intuition for cover and vantage. The Guardian advanced steadily, unaffected by the storm of distorted energy around it. At a narrow outcrop overlooking a natural bowl in the terrain, Callum positioned himself prone, adjusting his rifle with meticulous care. The winds here were unpredictable, swirling between mineral spires, but he read the currents with practiced confidence. Below, the Guardian lumbered into view. Callum steadied his aim, aligning the crosshairs with a flickering nexus within its chest where refractive lines converged, its most vulnerable point, invisible to scanners but visible to trained eyes. He exhaled, emptying his lungs, and squeezed the trigger. The round struck true. A resonant crack tore through the air as the Guardian buckled, its refractive abilities collapsing in a cascade of shattered light. Zyphor units reacted instantly, rushing toward the source of the attack. Callum was already moving, sliding back from the ridge as shards of refracted energy lanced across the terrain where he had lain moments before. Threx scrambled after him, equal parts terrified and exhilarated. "You destabilized an entire command structure with one shot." Callum allowed himself a thin smile. Then let's make sure it counts. Behind them, the battlefield shifted. Coalition forces sensed the opening. Callum felt momentum tilt in their favor, but the Guardians' fall had awakened something deeper within the Zyphor ranks. The next wave was already forming, stronger and more coordinated. The fight was far from over. The fall of the Convergence Guardian altered the battlefield with immediate, violent clarity. Waves of fractured light rolled outward like a wounded heartbeat, and every Zyphor within range responded with sharpened intent. Callum and Threx descended the ridge at a controlled sprint, navigating unstable stone while the coalition below scrambled into new tactical positions. A shift in morale rippled through the ranks. Hope, fragile but unmistakable. Callum felt it like a warm current beneath the chaos, though he refused to let it dull his focus. Victory demanded discipline, not optimism. Coalition command relayed hurried data through crackling comms, announcing a surge in Zyphor readings emanating from deeper within the canyon system. The source, they claimed, matched energy frequencies recorded during previous large-scale Zyphor mobilizations. Threx listened intently, his expression tightening as he decoded the fragmented transmissions. "They are activating a Genesis node," he said. "If it reaches full resonance, they will generate reinforcements faster than we can eliminate them." Callum slowed, processing the implications. The Guardian's presence suddenly made sense. It had been defending the approach to the node, not directing an isolated patrol. If the node completed its cycle, the Coalition's temporary advantage would dissolve instantly. The enemy would flood the canyon with fresh, crystalline soldiers, each one adapted to the planet's erratic energy fields. There would be no second chance. "Where is it?" Callum asked. Threx gestured toward a narrow gorge where the terrain pulsed in faint, kaleidoscopic patterns. "Beyond that pass, inside a resonance chamber. Your weapons may be the only ones capable of destabilizing it." Callum felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. Not burden, but purpose. He checked the rounds in his pack, counting what remained. Enough for precision, not waste. The wind carried a metallic tang, sharper than before, signaling the node's accelerating pulse. Coalition forces could not reach it in time. The terrain was too unstable and their systems too compromised. This task fell to him. He motioned for Threx to follow, and together they entered the gorge. The air grew dense with refractive vibrations, humming with a frequency that resonated in their bones. Each step forward intensified the sensation, bending light into dizzying patterns that challenged Callum's depth perception. Threx struggled, his balance wavering under the disorienting waves, but Callum guided him with brief, steadying touches. Instinct overrode distortion. Experience overpowered confusion. His mind filtered signals with practiced clarity. The gorge opened abruptly into a cavernous chamber carved by natural forces and Zyphor architecture. At its center rose the Genesis node, a massive crystalline structure pulsing with inner light, each beat sending energy cracks spidering across the floor. Swarms of unformed Zyphor bodies rippled inside the chamber's translucent shell, their silhouettes flickering like trapped phantoms awaiting birth. The sight stirred an instinctive unease, but Callum pushed it aside. He sought weaknesses, not dread. Threx crouched behind a slanted ridge and gestured urgently. "Its core is unstable. If you strike the correct intersection of refracted lines, the entire structure will collapse inward. But the resonance is fluctuating. Your timing must be perfect. Then I'll make it perfect." Callum found a vantage point along an elevated shelf that overlooked the node. The wind inside the chamber moved in irregular currents, shaped by the node's energy. He observed the pulses, mapping their rhythm until the turbulence became predictable. The air vibrated through the scope, but he adjusted, aligning the crosshairs with the shifting convergence point deep within the node. His heartbeat slowed, syncing unconsciously with the cycles of the structure. He exhaled and fired. The tungsten round cut through the distorted air as though slipping between wavelengths. It struck the node's nexus exactly as two refracted beams converged. For an instant, everything stilled, light, sound, even breath. Then the chamber erupted in a cacophony of shattering resonance. Cracks spread across the node's surface, accelerating in jagged veins until the entire structure imploded, collapsing into a cloud of glittering dust. Zyphor forces across the canyon staggered, their coordination fractured. The unformed soldiers dissolved into inert shards, never given life. Coalition units surged forward to seize the momentum. Threx turned to Callum, all washing away the last traces of doubt. "You ended a war engine with one decision." Callum shook his head. "I ended one battle. The war ends when a galaxy stops underestimating what they don't understand." Outside the chamber, the storm began to quiet, its distorted light settling into natural hues. Callum reloaded his rifle with steady hands and stepped toward the exit, ready for whatever waited beyond the canyon.